One of the oldest and most powerful stories of faith as told in the Bible is the story of Job. Job was a man who was deeply devoted to God, wealthy beyond measure. He was also respected by all that knew him. However, nothing could prepare Job for the twists in his life that would shake him to his very core. This is the story of a man whose faith was tested beyond what most could bear. Through suffering, loss, and unimaginable grief, Job's journey teaches us about the mystery of faith, the strength of patience, and the importance of trusting God, even when we can't understand His ways. In the ancient land of Uz, Job lived a life of prosperity and peace. Job had all one would want: 7 sons and 3 daughters, thousands of sheep, camels, oxen, and donkeys. And besides all these, he had countless servants to run his household. Job was a man with great respect and admiration. People respected him not only because of what he owned, but also for being very honest. He was one of the most faithful people who hated evil and reverenced God. Job was a family man who cared much for his children. Whenever his sons and daughters gathered for feasts, Job offered sacrifices before God, praying to God to forgive them in case they have committed some evil acts. He is faithful to God. In all the things he was blessed, it seemed that no evil could befall him. Little did Job know that his faith was about to be put to test in ways he could not imagine. One day, while the heavenly hosts were chatting with each other, Satan appeared before God, who spoke of Job's faithfulness. "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on earth, a man who cannot ever be blamed and upright, who fears God and shuns evil." Satan replied, "Does Job fear God for nothing? You've protected him, blessed him with wealth, family, and health. But take all of it away, and he will surely curse you to your face." God agreed for Satan to test the faith of Job. Satan could remove everything from Job, however, Satan could not hurt him physically. Soon one of Job's servants came running to him with a terrible news. Disaster had come down upon Job in the form of raiders, who stole his oxen and his donkeys and slew some of his servants. Before Job could process this, another servant ran in, saying that fire had come down from heaven and had burnt up his sheep and more of the servants. Then a third servant ran in, saying that raiders had taken away Job's camels and slain more of his servants. Finally, the fourth messenger came carrying the worst news of all. Job's sons and daughters had all been gathered there when a strong wind struck the house, and it fell on them, killing them, and claimed that he was the only survivor. Job's world was crushed. All his valued possessions, his family, wealth, security, everything swept away from him. Not a place to go, not a word to say. He could have damned God in his anger, but instead Job took off his robe, shaved his head for his grief, and fell upon the ground. "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away," he said. "Blessed be the name of the Lord." Even during his pain and sorrow, Job refused to curse God. He accepted that all he had was a gift from God, and that God had the right to take it away. Job's faith remained firm, but Satan was not done yet. After Job's wealth and family are taken from him, Satan argues that Job's piety would falter if his health were affected. In response, God allows Satan to afflict Job with painful sores, but with the condition that Job's life should be spared. Satan returned unto God and said, "Skin for skin." Satan replied, "A man will give all he has for his own life, but now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." "Very well then," the Lord said to Satan, "he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Job was constantly in pain. Boils and ulcers festered over his body, and his pain was so severe that he would take a piece of broken pottery to scrape away at his skin. He sits among the ashes, shadow of the prosperous man he once was. Even Job's wife had given up. In desperation, she told him, "Are you still clinging to your purity? Curse God and die." But Job said, Shall we indeed accept good from God and not evil? Job could not bring himself to curse God, even as he lay covered with boils and had lost everything he owned. 3 of Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, heard of his affliction and came to console him. When they saw him from afar, they scarcely recognized him. Job's affliction had transformed him so that his friends wept when they looked at him, rending their robes and sitting with him on the ground for 7 days in silence, seeing that his pain was too great for words. At the end of 7 days, Job finally opened his mouth and proclaimed his curse over the day he was born. He wished himself never to have known the birth that brought such misery upon him. Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? Why was I not stillbirth from the womb? Why did I not die when she who was in labor lay by me, laments Job. He could not think of anything that made life carry forth any purpose with all the sorrow he was going through. Eliphaz spoke first. He mildly rebuked Job, saying perhaps that his suffering surely results from a deep-seated hidden sin. Eliphaz states, "Who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed?" He exhorted Job to turn in repentance, asking God to forgive him, implying that Job's suffering is some form of divine punishment. Eliphaz's words wounded his soul. Deep in his heart, he knew he had done nothing to deserve this treatment. Job felt miserable, wronged, and abandoned. If only my anguish could be weighed, and all my misery be placed on the scales, it would surely outweigh the sand of the seas. No wonder my words have been impetuous. Then there was Bildad. The second friend now went forward to echo in substance Eliphaz's line of argument. Bildad said that Job's children could have been taken only because they had sinned and needed to be repented of. Bildad stated, "When your children sinned against him, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin. But if you will seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, even now he will rouse himself on your behalf and restore you to your prosperous state." It was then that Zophar said, and was even more severe on Job, "Yet if you devote your heart to him and stretch out your hands to him, if you put away the sin that is in your hand and allow no evil to dwell in your tent, then, free of fault, you will lift up your face. You will stand firm and without fear." Zophar views that Job must repel and then pray to God for mercy, because there is hope for restoration if Job stray from his guilt. Job continued begging God for his innocence. He thought that he had lived a good life and that he was true, yet he could not comprehend why God allowed such things to happen. He began to ask God himself why the wicked prospered and why he, a faithful man, was in so much pain. Job's heart was full of distress. He yearned for an answer from God. Job felt forsaken, but he clung to his trust, waiting until finally he would behold God and receive an explanation of why he had permitted him to endure such torment. His endurance and continuation in the face of such anguish were remarkable, though even so, he wrestled with deeply probing concerns about justice and suffering. At last, after this dialogue, or rather debate, between Job and his friends, God finally spoke from a whirlwind to Job. God did not explain why Job suffered, but asked him a series of questions showing how great and difficult his creation was. "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it?" God reminded Job that humans don't have understanding about some mysteries in the world, so he could just get off his high horse, shut up, and remember. Job understood where his talk came from and began by confessing, acknowledging, or agreeing that God's wisdom is much bigger and richer than his mind's power and capacity. Job repented for questioning God's ways. He admitted that he had spoken of things he did not understand. God was pleased with Job's humility and faith. He rebuked Job's friends for their harsh words and told them to offer sacrifices to atone for their wrong judgments against Job. But in the end, God restored Job's fortunes. He gave him twice as much as he had before. More animals, more wealth, and a new family. His faith was tested in ways that would have broken most people, but he remained loyal to God through it all. He lived out a long and blessed life, and his story has become testimony to faith and endurance. The story of Job teaches us many profound lessons about faith, patience, and trust in God. Even if we are not able to discern the reasoning behind our suffering, we can trust the wisdom of God to lead us through our lives. The book of Job explores the depths of human suffering, divine justice, and faith to great maturity. It is the story of man's unyielding persistence through personal loss and pain in relation to questioning God's role. Contrasted are the conversations with friends in which he is accused of sin with his defense of his innocence. Finally, God's response to Job reveals the infinite wisdom and power behind his long-suffering nature. Job's humility and repentance restored him while laying a balance between trust in God at whatever unimaginable trials are met. Through Job, we learn that suffering is not always a result of personal sin, and God's ways are beyond our understanding. How do you cope with suffering in your own life? And what lessons can you take from Job's perseverance and ultimate restoration? Let's know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into timeless scriptures.